Finally, we have the most notorious kind of attack, a flood attack. Attacks like OpenDNS resolver reflection use the fact that responses from these resolvers can be very large compared to the size of the request sent, something like 20 to 30 times. If an attack spoofs its source IP in the request to these OpenDNS resolvers, the resolvers can be convinced that they are talking to a victim. They will then send amplified traffic to the victim in response to the attacker's spoofed requests. These attacks will qualify as DDoS because although they originate from a single source, which bounces requests off many resolvers, these distributed resolvers end up sending the actual data to the server, which causes damage. This even occasionally happens with no intermediary devices, just the attacker and the victim. Say for example, a site offers a pastebin that allows you to upload large amounts of text, which is then validated on a single thread. If an attacker can constantly queue requests that will take an inordinate amount of time to validate, they can flood this weak system with enough traffic to make it effectively unusable. The mitigations for many of these attacks come down to infrastructure. While there are mitigations like black hole routing and network diffusion, these still only function if your network hardware can physically handle the throughput. This is where services like Cloudflare, who offer DDoS protection, carve their niche. You may know them as the whimsical company that has a 24-hour video stream of their lava lamps from which they source their entropy. But that hasn't been generating the ad revenue they were expecting, so instead they built a billion-dollar hosting platform with a supposed 388 terabyte per second network throughput. They offer to stand in front of any network traffic a site will receive to manage load balancing, rerouting, connection restriction, and various other services to ensure that internet-facing software is configured to be secure. These solutions can be quite powerful for mitigating some types of flood attacks and have made tremendous leaps in progress in just the last decade. So too has the rest of the world, far from the days of old where any 15-year-old could grab your IP from a P2P application and point a network stressor at it to knock you offline. Unfortunately, this does nothing for mitigating the vast majority of DOS attacks, which are what we will focus on in the rest of the video. In the world of bug bounty, DOS is criminally overlooked, heavily stigmatized, and virtually always out of scope. But why? Shouldn't we have the good guys trying to find things before the bad guys do? Unfortunately, this limitation arises out of necessity. When DOS testing is allowed broadly, some handful of hooligans inevitably pelt the server with harmless traffic, which clogs up logs and makes finding real threats more difficult. Or worse, they loose genuinely harmful attacks without any concept of what will result. A surefire way to get a knock at the door from a 3-letter agency. And even when researchers know what they're doing, mistakes still happen. Underestimating the impact of a vulnerability during response time testing, where even an extra single character breaks the boundary between slowing the server down for a few seconds and requiring a hard reset, can lead to some pretty catastrophic results. Don't ask us how we know. Beyond simply finding these vulnerabilities, confirming and quantifying their impact walks a fine line. This necessarily entails compromising the availability of some part of an application, at least for a moment. In rare cases, the vulnerable software on the server is available to the researcher, to be spun up locally and confirm issues without disrupting the production application. However, in the vast majority of cases, there's simply no ethical way to test for DOS, let alone one that can bring about financial benefits. Which, sure, that's okay, there's plenty of other vulnerabilities to find in every application. But a lack of use for this knowledge eventually turns into a lack of circulation of this knowledge in our community altogether. And when we turn our heads to knowledge that we perceive as taboo, we tend to overlook the value of the information when applied with nuance. So, I challenge you. Let your preconceptions of denial of service fall away as we now take our first step into the topics that generally aren't covered when it comes to this conversation.
I'm a dead man, cause I'm chasing money till I drop.